Hey everybody, and welcome back to another book review. So this one is one of the educator ones. I told you guys a couple reviews ago that we've got some educator books coming up. So this is for all you educators. If you're not an educator, you're welcome to stay on and listen, because I think it's something that perhaps you might want to know about within your child's classroom or in classrooms in America. If you're just here because you like following me and you're like, I don't care about educator books, see ya. But so this book is called Every Student Every Day by Kristyn Borrero, probably butchering that name. But it's basically what's known as the no-nonsense nurture model. And we started the school year off with a professional development day where we went through some of the key components of this no-nonsense nurture model. So what the no-nonsense nurture model is a idea and a model in which teachers are giving instruction, teachers are teaching, but we're not letting up and we're not dealing with a whole lot of behavioral issues. And the reason that this model came up is because a lot of people, especially in certain grades and above, like 5th and above, tend to see a lot more behavioral issues and struggle with things if they aren't really following what is considered a no-nonsense nurturer model. So the no-nonsense nurturer model, basically you give the instructions and you then check for understanding, you make sure kids are following, and you don't let up. So an example is in my classroom, for example, I give the instructions, right? And as soon as the kids start working, then I say, okay, I see so-and-so working. So-and-so is doing what I've asked, blah, blah, blah. Then if a kid is off task, I say, hey, this is not what we're doing right now. The expectation is to be taking notes or whatever it is. Let's get on track. If they don't, I repeat the steps. And then after that, then we move up in the chain of command. The no-nonsense nurture is one of those big things where it sounds weird when you hear it. Like, it sounds weird when you first hear about it. But in reality, depending on the type of school that you're in or the type of teacher that you are, a lot of us are actually doing elements of it. One of the pieces, one of the big pieces, and I'm going to have to go back in the book real quick to make sure I get the right phrasing, but one of the big pieces of it is using positive narration. So that's basically, I give the instructions. I say, all right, we're going to write down our standard and objective onto our notes, and let's say a kid's off task. Then I would say something like, so-and-so is writing down their standard and objective in their notebook. So-and-so is writing their standard and objective down in their notebook. So these are like positive things that they're doing what I've asked them to do, right? The kid who's not doing what you've asked them to do typically will hear that and be like, oh, I need to get on task, right? That's the concept. I don't like positive narration, not because it's a bad thing or because it's a bad idea, but I don't like it because for me as a student, if you're still talking when I'm supposed to be doing something, I'm getting really annoyed with you, whether it's student or teachers. So, and I'm also not a big fan. I know that we have to do it, and I do it myself as a teacher, but I'm not a big fan of people walking around the room because it stresses me out. As a student, I get so stressed out if somebody is walking around the room and checking above me. I remember a couple years ago, one of my coaches was like, you need to, place check marks on people's papers as you're walking around to let them know that they're doing the right thing. Absolutely not. Because in the video example that they showed of a teacher who was doing that, she snatched a paper from a kid when they were mid-sentence, and I was like, absolutely not. That's not how we do things. Because there is still a level of respect that I want to give my students. So in terms of some elements of it, I don't fully agree with them, just because while yes, they work as a teacher, that's one, not me. And two, as a student, I would get so annoyed, and I did get annoyed. During the professional development, or working or whatever, and she was walking around and she kept saying, like, oh, so and so's, working well, or so and so is doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I was like, I'm going to kill you because, like, stop talking. And that's just, it's really just my personality, like, I don't do well with that. So yeah, it's a good concept. The book itself is I like it because it's kind of a workbook. It gives you a chance to kind of reflect on things that maybe you're doing in your classroom, or taking the information and putting it into practice. Like, what would you do? How would you do it? So I do like that aspect of it, but yeah, there's just some things that, like, I kind of struggle with. And the cool thing about this particular book, for those of you that are educators, is, so, like, my school's doing it this year. And when I went to help my mom set up her classroom at a different school, different district, sort of, her school's doing the same book. And so she and I have been talking a little bit about what we've read, but also, like, what we've seen. I definitely do agree, though, with, like, if we're constantly calling out the negative behaviors or whatever, it's not necessarily yielding good results. I do agree with that element of it. So, there's ways. And I tend to be more of a blunt person, not just a teacher. I'm a blunt person. So the element of, like, I've given you the directions, like, what's the question here? Like, do A, B, C, D. We're not, wasting time or whatever. That's always kind of been me. But I do like that it's, like, actually a practice that I'm not just the only one doing. And I think it's also a really good thing to think about, especially for younger teachers, and teachers who struggle with classroom management. And I know it's so hard because, like, we want to be the kids' favorite teachers. And we don't want the kids to hate us. And, like, overall, I don't have kids that, hate me or dislike me. If they are mad at me, it's because I'm holding them accountable. It's because I'm keeping them to a high standard, which is really what we're supposed to be doing as teachers. From a parent perspective, not that I am a parent, but, like, I always say this to parents, like, I'm holding your kids accountable, so I need you to do the same thing. If I give a kid a homework assignment, because the number one thing that parents always complain about is that we don't give homework. Like, no, your kid just isn't bringing it home, which is why their grade is the way it is in my class. So if I'm holding them to a high standard of get your homework done and get it turned in on time, then you should be holding your kid to a high standard. And I know, especially particularly in the school that I work in, having kids that are responsible when their parents are working in the evenings or working overnight. A lot of my kids' parents work overnight, so they're not necessarily checking to see if their kids' homework is done, because they're not there, but really just kind of being on the same page. I'm not being mean to your kid, but I've given them the assignment. This is when it's due. They didn't turn it in that day. I gave them, another day because they asked. They still didn't turn it in. It's now 10 weeks later. I'm not taking it. That's just holding kids to a high standard. So yeah. So there you have it. Every Student, Every Day. Kristyn Borrero. Pretty interesting book. It just gave me some pause and some time to reflect. So hopefully you all enjoyed this book review. I know I don't do a whole lot of educational books because how many people that follow me are also teachers? Not too many. But I did read the book cover to cover. I didn't do all the little worksheet pages, though, because we kind of did some of them during the professional development. So there's that. As always, please continue to drop other books in the recommendation pile. And I look forward to seeing you in the next book review. Bye!